Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki, Iskcon Standaracharya Srila Prabhupada Ki, Raktaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki, Shri Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Devi Ki, Shri Shri Gaunitai Ki, Shri Shri Radha Sham Sundar Ki, Shri Giri Govardhan Ki, Srila Prabhupada Ki, Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki, Shri Hare Krishna Mahamantra Ki, Shri Shri Gaur Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Sri Prabhupada. Hare Krishna devotees. And good morning to you all. Hope everyone is okay. Haribol, why not? And well, I'm very happy to be here again with you all. Iskcon KL. It's such a nice yatra and nice temple, nice devotees. So today, devotees and friends, we have been asked or ordered to read a verse from Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita, as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, chapter 17, excuse me. That was last night. So chapter 17, verse, what is it? 23. 23. Right. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So I assume I'll just read the verse myself. It's an interesting verse, kind of unusual verse really, for Bhagavad Gita, somewhat unusual. Om Tat Sad Iti Nirdesho Brahmanas Tri Vidas Vrita Brahmanas Tena Vedascha Yagyascha Vihita Pura. Anyone like? Oh, it's there, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, anyway, so just repeat after me, please. Om Tat Sat Iti Nirdesho Brahmanas Tri Vidha Smrita Brahmanas Tena Vedash Cha Yagyash Cha Vihita Pura. Om Tat Sat Iti Nirdesho Brahmanas Tri Vidha Smrita Brahmanas Tena Vedascha Yagyascha Vihita Pura. Om Tat Sat iti nirdesho.
Om Tat Sat iti nirdesho.
Brahmanas trividasmita.
Brahmanas trividasmita.
Brahmanas tena vedascha.
Brahmanas tena vedascha.
Yajnascha vihita pura. Om Tat Sat iti nirdesho.
Om Tat Sat iti nirdesho.
Brahmanas trividhasmita.
Brahmanas trividasmita.
Brahmanas tena vedascha.
Brahmanas tena vedascha.
Yajnascha vihita pura.
Yajnascha vihita pura. Om Tat Sat iti nirdesho. Brahmanas trividasmita. Brahmanas tena vedascha. Yajnascha vihita pura.
Om Tat Sat iti nirdesho.
Om Tat Sat iti nirdesho.
Brahmanas trividhasmritah.
Brahmanas trividasmita.
Brahmanas tena vedascha.
Brahmanas tena vedascha.
Yajnascha vihita pura.
Yajnascha vihita pura. Om Tat Sat iti nirdesho. Brahmanas trividasmita. Brahmanas tena vedascha. Yajnascha vihita pura.
Ladies,
Om Tat Sat iti nirdesho.
Om Tat Sat iti nirdesho.
Brahmanas trividasmita.
Brahmanas trividasmita.
Brahmanas tena vedascha.
Brahmanas tena vedascha.
Yajnascha vihita pura.
Yajnascha vihita pura. Om Tat Sat iti nirdesho. Brahmanas trividasmita. Brahmanas tena vedascha. Yajnascha vihita pura. Om Tat Sat iti nirdesho. Brahmanas trividasmita. Brahmanas tena vedascha. Yajnascha vihita pura. Om Tat Sat iti nirdesho. Brahmanas trividasmita. Brahmanas tena vedascha. Yajnascha vihita pura.
Indication of the Supreme.
Indication of the Supreme.
Tat,
Tat,
that.
that.
Sat,
Sat,
eternal.
eternal.
Iti,
Iti,
thus.
thus.
Nirdesha,
Nirdesha,
indication.
indication.
Brahmana,
Brahmana,
of the Supreme.
of the Supreme.
Trividha,
Trivida,
threefold.
threefold.
Smrita
Smrita
is considered.
is considered.
Brahmana,
Brahmana,
the Brahmins.
the Brahman.
Tena,
Veda,
with that.
with that.
Veda,
Veda,
the Vedic literature.
the Vedic literature.
Cha,
Cha,
also.
also.
Yajna,
Yajna,
sacrifice.
sacrifice.
Cha,
Cha,
also.
also.
Vihita,
Veda,
use.
use.
Pura,
Pura,
for formally.
Formally.
Translation. From the beginning of creation, the three words Om Tat Sat were used to indicate the supreme absolute truth. These three symbolic representations were used by Brahmins while chanting the hymns of the Vedas and during sacrifices for the satisfaction of the Supreme. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. It has been explained that penance, sacrifice, charity, and foods are divided into three categories: the modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance. But whether first class, second class, or third class, they're all conditioned, contaminated by the material modes of nature. When they are aimed at the Supreme, Om Tat Sat, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Eternal, they become means for spiritual elevation. In the scriptural injunctions, such an objective is indicated. These three words, Om Tat Sat, particularly indicate the absolute truth, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the Vedic hymns, the word Om is always found. One who acts without following the regulations of the scriptures will not attain the absolute truth. He will get some temporary result, but not the ultimate end of life. The conclusion is that the performance of charity, sacrifice, and penance must be done in the mode of goodness. Performed in the mode of passion or ignorance, they're certainly inferior in quality. The three words, Om Tat Sat, are uttered in conjunction with the holy name of the Supreme Lord. For example, Om Tat Vishnu. Whenever a Vedic hymn or the holy name of the Supreme Lord is uttered, Om is added. This is the indication of Vedic literature. These three words are taken from Vedic hymns. Om Ityetad Brahmano Nedishtam Nama, which is from the Rig Veda. So this indicates the first goal. Then Tat Tvam Asi, which is Chandogya Upanishad 6.8.7, indicates the second goal. And Sad Eva Somya, which is Chandogya Upanishad 6.2.1, indicates the third goal. Combined, they become Om Tat Sat. Formerly, when Brahma, the first created living entity, performed sacrifices, he indicated by these three words the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, the same principle has always been followed by disciplic succession. So, this hymn has great significance. Bhagavad Gita recommends, therefore, that any work done should be done for Om Tat Sat, or for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When one performs penance, charity, and sacrifice with these three words, he is acting in Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is a scientific execution of transcendental activities which enable one to return home back to Godhead. There is no loss of energy in acting in such a transcendental way. Well, I mean, it is a little complicated, and it might be, at least in some places or cases here in Purple, a little difficult to follow or to get what's really meant. Anyway, let's have a look at things. I'll read the verse again. Om tat sat iti nirdesho brahmanas krivadas pata brahmanas tena vedascha yagyascha vihita pura. Translation: from the beginning of creation, the three words Om Tat Sat were used to indicate the Supreme Absolute Truth. These three symbolic representations were used by Brahmins when chanting the hymns of the Vedas and during sacrifices for the satisfaction of the Supreme. Krishna Prasthad Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravan Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Bhastya Chadesha Tarane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchikapachurubhyascha kripasindhubhya evacha. Patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. We offer our respects to all you devotees, and we hope you're all doing well and you're happy in Krishna consciousness. Well, it is a little complicated. This is sort of a little bit of terminology and concepts which we don't read of much, not so much. At least in Prabhupada's writings and the books which Srila Prabhupada translated. And therefore, of course, this is Bhagavad Gita, it's not to be taken lightly, but it's not as essential as a lot of other things Prabhupada talks about. You know, if you read Prabhupada's books carefully and you really try and get into it, you see there are certain themes which Srila Prabhupada repeatedly discusses, like, for example, devotional service. Prabhupada just repeatedly again and again and again, and then again, Prabhupada talks about devotional service. It's just, really frequent, extremely frequent. Chanting the holy names. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada repeatedly emphasizes and stresses the chanting of the holy names, accepting a spiritual master, following the instructions of the spiritual master. Prabhupada again, repeatedly, just again and again, he discusses this, stresses this, and some other things too. A certain amount, not as much, but a certain amount about Varnashram, and various other things. The modes of nature, just in the sense of what they are and what to watch out for in regards to them. But Om Tat Sat, and what is implied or indicated, the term used here is indicated in the verse. The three words Om Tat Sat were used to indicate the Supreme Absolute Truth, and these three symbolic representations. And in the purport, that idea is there of indication as opposed to really embodying the absolute truth, which, in the case of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra particularly, it embodies, it is the words there, the Lord is present, they are forms of the Lord, Om Tat Sat, not that they're to be taken lightly, but they're not, the term, as we said and have read, they indicate there's some sort of indirectness, you could say, less of a degree of real directness, that this is it. Yeah. So anyway, it's interesting. It's certainly interesting because it is part of our culture, and well, it's part of Bhagavad Gita, so it must be important. Yeah, and incidentally, we have requested that a questions sheet be passed around, and yeah, there's up there. And then, yeah, if you've got any questions, you can write them down. For two reasons. Sri Jagannath Baladev Sudatra Devi Shishi Gaurata Shishi Radhashan Sundar Ki Jai. For two main reasons. One is that if you have to put your hand up and speak in the presence of everyone, particularly like our biggest assembly of the week, then you may be a little sort of nervous of just, talking in front of everyone, and you might even worry that if you ask a question verbally, if you speak a question, it may not be a good question, and some devotees may think you're a little silly or something like that to ask, why did she ask that question? But, having said that, there's a little saying, the only silly question is the one that is not asked. And if something's important to you and it's not clear, and you want to get some clarification, well, obviously you should ask a question about it. So anyway, when people write down questions, of course, it's anonymous, and so you don't have to worry about what anyone may think of you personally. That's one thing. And the second thing is, for us who are attempting to give a class, then we don't really know at the end of the class, or we don't know perhaps when to end the class, because if there's lots of questions, it takes time. And then as a result, everyone's taking prasadam may be delayed. Oh, Krishna, that's a serious problem, isn't it? Prasadam takes precedence. So we don't want to make prasadam wait, because prasadam is a form of Krishna. We don't want to keep Krishna waiting. So, yeah, and if there's no questions at all, then you may leave for 15 or 20 minutes for questions, but then there's no questions, and then you don't know what to do. The class ends early, and then the devotees have to wait for prasadam. So, anyway, if we can see questions written out, then we can at least make some sort of estimate of how much time we should leave. So there you go. Hopefully a piece of paper and a pen will be going around in a little while. And you can ask some questions if you want. So, okay, Om Tat Sat. Prabhupada, the very first point Prabhupada makes in the purport is that, as has already been stated in the 17th chapter, that penance, sacrifice, charity, and foods are divided into three categories just in terms of the modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance. Foods and goodness, foods and passion, foods and ignorance, etc. So, but Prabhupada makes the point that even though this is emphasized, that there's the tendency for these things to be contaminated by the modes. Not always, of course. If you got food, prasadam, which is offered to the Lord, usually we don't take it to be contaminated by the modes due to the process of offering and the process of cooking by a devotee. Like a devotee is very focused in Krishna consciousness, then they're from the outset considered pure. Yes. So, anyway, the thing is, they may be pure, they may be impure. It depends. But as Prabhupada says, when they're aimed at the Supreme, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then they become means for spiritual elevation. And aimed at the Supreme, in this context at least, is being expressed as Om Tat Sat. You know, you all know Jayapataka Maharaj very well, because he spends more time here than in so many other places. But you know, he always says Om Tat Sat, isn't it? At the end of some prayers, Om Tat Sat. Yes. I mean, it's not so common in my experience, at least, in the association of devotees, at least where I spend more time. But anyway, it's there. It's part of the Vedic tradition. Om Tat Sat indicates. It's not totally direct, like Hare Krishna. It doesn't just indicate, it is the Lord. But Om Tat Sat indicates, oh yes, that's right, the absolute truth. And you know, there are some subtleties here which Prabhupada touches on. And it's interesting, for those who are interested like in reading and studying Krishna consciousness, then there's certain things being pointed out here or sort of referred to directly or indirectly, which are actually very interesting if you're interested in studying the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. You know, the first thing is, and you know, ultimately it is very important, is that the Vedic literatures are divided, generally taken to be divided into two sections. And they're called Shruti and Smriti. And we don't complicate things. You may be sitting there thinking, oh, I just thought it was just the Vedic literatures. But now we're talking about the Shruti section and the Smriti section. Basically, the Shruti section means or includes the 4 Vedas, Rig, Sama, Yajur, and the Atharva Vedas, plus, at least generally, their, what are called their corollary literatures, the Brahmanas and the Upanishads, and so on, like that, which sort of elaborate on what is within the sort of what is strictly the Rig, Sama, Yajur, and the Atharva Vedas. So that's Shruti. And then Smriti generally means the Puranas. Srimad Bhagavatam is one of the Puranas, or the last of the Puranas. The Itihasas means the histories, which basically means Ramayana and Mahabharata. And then there's some Smriti, what do they call them? Kind of like social literatures, some rules and regulations, like Ayurveda. Ayurveda is generally in that category. And then there's Vedanta Sutra, which at least according to Srila Vyasadeva, when he first concluded the Vedic literatures, he intended to be like the final summary and the final drawing out the final conclusions. Although, that's a bit of a long story. But that's what he thought initially. So there's a Shruti and Smriti. Even the Shruti, the 4 Vedas, the Sanskrit which is used is a little different from the Sanskrit used in the Puranas, the Itihasas, like that. And so the Sanskrit used in the 4 Vedas and their corollaries is called generally or often Vedic Sanskrit, and the Sanskrit of the Puranas and Mahabharata, etc., is often referred to as classical Sanskrit. And there are differences to some degree in the way they're chanted and even sort of certain elements of grammar. And, we don't want to complicate life too much for you. There you were sitting thinking, all I've got to do is chant Hare Krishna. Now I've got to worry about 2 types of Sanskrit. Anyway, but it's kind of, anyway, Prabhupada's exploring things a bit here. Like, for example, Prabhupada says here, whenever a Vedic hymn, this term Vedic, as Prabhupada's applying it here, means Shruti, from the 4 Vedas and their corollaries, Brahmanas, Aranyakas, and Upanishads. Yeah. So whenever a Vedic hymn means a Shruti hymn is uttered, Om is added. So sometimes you find in Prabhupada's books, occasionally not often, but it's there. Sometimes Om, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, means that Maha Mantra is being referred to in the context that it's also there in the Shruti, in the 4 Vedas. And the Brahmanas, Aranyakas, Upanishads, these are the Shruti. But when we chant Hare Krishna, and when you read, generally in Prabhupada's books, Chaitanya Charitamrita, and here and there where Prabhupada regularly presents the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, generally there's no Om. It's just Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. That means, because in the Smriti, they don't use Om so much. Basically, they don't use Om. It's more just in the Shruti literatures. And even, anyway, okay, let's not get into too many complexities. But I'm sure you've all noticed every Sunday when you come, including today, when we start the class, just when you're just starting, what do we chant? Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Means it's being used as like a traditional or Shruti mantra, and not one of the kind of more modernized mantras. Yeah. And that Om, in that sense, that Om it's called a Bij mantra. You may know enough Sanskrit or even just Hindi to know that Bij means seed. Yeah. So in this Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, which we chant so often at the beginning of classes, the Om, interesting little point, is not exactly part of the mantra. I mean, it's part of the mantra to some degree, because it indicates the Supreme. But really, the mantra is Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, and it's complete. Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya is complete without the Om. But the Om, particularly in these Vedic or Shruti mantras, Bij mantra, it's like the use of it it's something like a stepping stone to sort of step up and then into the actual mantra. Although it may not be essential in terms of trying to understand what does this mantra mean. Like Om Namo Shivaya. Every good Hindu knows Om Namo Shivaya. And it's the same principle. It's just Namo Shivaya is complete. But the Om is there. It sort of adds a little weight at the beginning as a stepping stone to enter into the mantra. Om Namo Narayanaya. These types of mantras, the Om is there as a Bij mantra. And there's a number of Bij mantras. Those of you who are second initiated, then you would know, and I mean, probably, I'm sure all of you know, Om Bhur Bhuva Swatat Savitur, etc. Yes, that's the first of our Gayatri mantras, and that's just famous mantra in Hinduism. But it's a Shruti mantra, it's from the Rig Veda. It's a Rig Veda mantra, actually. Yeah, and so it begins with Om. And again, those of you who are second initiated, you would know we chant 7 Gayatri mantras. Some of them, the first one, that famous first one, Om Bhur Bhuva, begins Om, but then there are other couple of mantras there, they begin with Aim. This is another Bij mantra. Or Clean. Yeah. It's another Bij mantra. which is used, like I said, it's a seed mantra, but it's used more like a stepping stone to help you to enter the actual mantra, which is a statement. You know, it's a statement. Like Namo Shivaya means obeisances to Shiva. The ending Aya in many cases means to, like Vasudevaya, to Vasudeva, Krishnaya, Narayanaya, Shivaya, to the person. So anyway, Prabhupada gives an explanation, sort of, it's a brief explanation of what this Om Tat Sat is about. He quotes, first of all, in the second paragraph of the purport, he quotes a verse or a line from the Rig Veda, Om Ityetad Brahmano Nedishtam Nama, which Prabhupada says, it's indicating the first goal, Om being more like indicative than literally it. So Om indicates the supreme, the absolute truth, or it can be the Supreme Lord, depends on the context, but definitely Om is to do with the absolute truth. Yes, and that's more or less what this statement means. Om Nityeta Brahmano Nedishtam Nama. I'm sure some of you know Sanskrit better than me. But that line basically seems to mean that this Om, Om Iti means therefore. This Om, therefore, is referring to Brahmano Nedishtam Nama. It's like a form of the Supreme Brahman. And maybe you noticed, maybe you didn't notice, that in the verse, that the term in the second line, Brahmanas, the third line, Brahmanas. So Brahmanas means Brahman. It's not Brahman, it's Brahman. And Brahmanas means the Brahmins. Yeah. So anyway, this next little idea, Omiti, this Om, therefore, indicates Brahman, the absolute truth. And then the second one, Tat, Om Tat Sat. So that was Om. Then Tat, the explanation, clarification, what it indicates. Tat Tamasi. I imagine, you're all, or the great majority, you've heard this mantra before. Have you heard this mantra before? Tat Tamasi. It's a famous mantra, particularly amongst the impersonalists. Tat Tvam Asi means you are that. Tat means that. Tvam, you. Asi means you are. Ami, Asi, Ati. I am, you are, he, she, or it is. So Tat Tvam Asi. You are that. So what's that? Well, that is the absolute truth. Ultimately Krishna, but the way it's applied generally means the absolute truth could be Brahman, Paramatma, or Bhagavan, but the absolute truth. And then, what is it here? And Sad, Eva Somya. Sad, this is the Sat, referring to the term Sat, Om Tat Sat. So Sad, when the T in Sanskrit is the last letter of a word, and the first letter of the next word is A, then the T becomes a D. Haribol. This is called Sandhi, Sanskrit. You studied Sanskrit, right? Yeah, I'm sure you did. So that's, I mean, the rules of Sandhi, how the last letters particularly and the first letters of words as they meet, how they change. Sure, it's complicated. Did you learn all the rules? You did? Sure. I tell you what, I started learning. Got a bit too much. So anyway, Sad or Sat. Ava generally means certainly, definitely, it's sort of a term of emphasis. Somya. So this Somya means, like many Sanskrit words, it has different meanings, but if you've got Prabhupada's books on the computer, then you can just do a search for Somya. And this term Somya appears in many verses, and in the word for word, it's translated. And much more often than not, Somya is used in the sense of like, what would you say, sort of gentleness, gentility, being very cultured and nice and warm. I saw Vidura. The term Somya was used for Vidura because he was very gentle. He was a very real gentleman, very wonderful, warm, kind-hearted person. So in this context, Sad Eva Somya, it's possible to take it that the Sat, Ontat, Sat, means that the absolute truth is very nice. Krishna is a nice guy. He's a very friendly person, very warm person. So this absolute truth, there's no need to be afraid. In Christianity particularly, there's the idea of an angry God, a kind of like an envious God, actually. You will have no gods ahead of me. Yeah. And if you do, I will come along and bash you on the head. Whack. Yeah. An aggressive God. A punisher. God the punisher. And, which is indicating the laws of karma. But then it's not God's fault. It's your fault. If you get punished, it's your fault. Because you did some nonsense. It's like that, isn't it? Your parents sometimes I hope they don't hit you, but sometimes they may shout at you, and you may feel a bit like, oh, what happened? But actually they're trying to help you. So when God is kind of, in punishment mood, not exactly, but people may think like that, it's just that he sees that you get your karma, which you deserve because you did the nonsense. So you got it, but now there's a tendency to externalize the blame, not want to accept that, well, it's my fault that I got punished, but rather, it's this God fellow. He's so aggressive and unkind. But it's not. It's just that we are idiots. I mean, we are first-class idiots. You're very nice devotees, but there's a lot of foolishness around. So there you go, on Tat Sat indicates the Lord, but that Sat, Somya, at least oftentimes, you could just say oftentimes, It's indicating a merciful aspect of the Lord. He's eternally, because Sat also means eternal, but the Lord is eternally merciful, even to idiots. That's pretty good, isn't it? If someone's an idiot, normally you think, what an idiot, like, who needs that person? But Krishna's kind to the idiots also. Krishna, he's such a nice person. So that indicates the third goal. Prabhupada says like that. Om indicates the first goal. Tat indicates the second goal. And Sat indicates the third goal. So as Prabhupada says, combined, they become Om Tat Sat. So, this is very sort of Shruti-oriented, rather than, the Smriti, the Puranas, Mahabharata, Ramayana, not the Danta Sutra, that's kind of a different thing. But otherwise, generally, those literatures which we are dealing with, which we study, Bhagavad Gita, part of Mahabharata, and Ishopanishad, well, of course, that's part of the Shruti. But we are studying literatures like here, Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam. Even if you don't know, but you can learn. Like in Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna's in the position, sort of, like he doesn't know. And now Krishna's got to educate him. And Arjuna becomes educated. And then he becomes a devotee. I mean, he is a devotee, but just in terms of the sort of the Leela, Arjuna comes from the mentality of a non-devotee to the mentality of a devotee, and a pure devotee, just through the course of Bhagavad Gita. If you read Bhagavad Gita regularly, you would know that in the second chapter, verse 7, Arjuna basically, or apparently, surrenders to Krishna. Now I'm your disciple and a soul surrendered unto you. Please instruct me. But effectively what he's saying is, please instruct me, help me by instructing me, but don't instruct me to fight, okay? But anything else, just instruct me, let's go for it. I'm not fighting. But then finally in the 10th chapter, after Lord Krishna presents the 4 seed verses there, from verse 8, 9, 10, and 11, if you're familiar with those verses, if you're not, you should be. If you're not, you should become familiar with them. Then when Krishna speaks those verses, Arjuna is convinced, completely convinced, not partially convinced, but completely convinced. And from that point, he's just fully surrendered, heart and soul, and ready to fight. Not just ready, but elsewhere Prabhupada explains that Arjuna became so convinced by what Krishna had said, and he accepted it so fully, and just got into it so fully, that when he was fighting on the battlefield, Arjuna, it was like he was dancing.